I found out I was going to be a mother in a room so quiet I could hear my own heart breaking and healing at the same time. The ultrasound monitor glowed in soft blue light, and when the technician turned the screen toward me, I saw it. Just a flicker, no bigger than a grain of rice, pulsing steadily. That's the heartbeat, she said gently. 7 weeks. Healthy. Strong. I pressed my hand to my mouth to keep the sob from escaping, not because I was ashamed, but because the sound felt too big for the small, sterile room. I was 26 years old, standing alone in a clinic on the Upper East Side, holding a printout that would change the course of my life forever. Adrian Romano didn't know. He didn't know that the night we'd shared 3 months ago, the rain against his penthouse windows, the city lights blurring behind us, had left me carrying something far more permanent than a memory. We hadn't planned anything. It wasn't reckless or wild. It was quiet, intentional, and when I slipped out before sunrise, I told myself it was better that way. Men like Adrian didn't do complications. They controlled empires. They didn't get surprised. I folded the ultrasound photo and tucked it into my purse like a secret too fragile for daylight. By the time I stepped outside, Manhattan was already humming. Yellow cabs, distant sirens, the smell of roasted coffee drifting from a corner cart. Life moving forward as if mine hadn't just tilted on its axis. I chose a loose navy dress for the company event that evening. The fabric skimmed over my stomach, forgiving but subtle. I studied myself in the mirror of my tiny Brooklyn apartment, tilting sideways, wondering if anyone could tell. 7 weeks wasn't much. Just a slight curve. A softness where there hadn't been one before. I placed my palm there instinctively. I've got you. I whispered, not sure if I was reassuring the baby or myself. The rooftop party was already in full swing when I arrived. String lights zigzagged overhead, casting a golden glow across polished heels and tailored suits. The Hudson River shimmered in the distance, dark and endless. Someone handed me a glass of sparkling water, mistaking it for champagne. I didn't correct them. I was halfway through a polite conversation about quarterly projections when I felt it, that familiar weight of being watched. I turned, and there he was. Jason Miller. My ex-crisp gray suit. Perfect smile, the kind that never quite reached his eyes. He looked me up and down slowly, openly, like he was assessing something he used to own. Emily, he said, stepping closer. Wow. His gaze dropped to my midsection. He let out a low chuckle. You got fat. The words weren't shouted, but they didn't need to be. The people nearest us heard. A couple of them laughed awkwardly, unsure if they were supposed to. Heat rushed to my face. My first instinct was to fold in on myself, to shrink. Instead, my hand moved on its own, resting protectively over my stomach. 7 weeks. A heartbeat strong enough to echo in my memory. Jason tilted his head. Guess corporate life's treating you well. I could have told him the truth. Could have said, I'm not gaining weight. I'm growing a future. I'm carrying a legacy that would make your knees buckle. But I stayed silent. Because the man who gave me this child wasn't someone you announced in the middle of small talk and cheap insults. Adrian Romano wasn't gossip. He was gravity. And gravity didn't need to raise its voice to pull everything into place. The laughter did not last long, but it echoed inside my head like it did. Jason smiled as if he had just delivered a clever joke instead of something meant to shrink me. I could feel eyes flicking toward my waist, then away again, polite and uncomfortable. Manhattan rooftops were designed for skyline views, not public autopsies of a woman's body. I straightened my shoulders instead of folding them. I had practiced that in the mirror for years. Good to see you too, Jason, I said evenly. My voice surprised me. It did not tremble. It did not crack. It sounded steady, almost detached, like I was observing the moment from somewhere above it. He leaned in slightly, lowering his tone, but not enough to keep it private. I mean it. You were always so disciplined. Pilates at 5 in the morning. What happened? What happened was that life happened. What happened was that I stopped trying to be small enough to fit inside someone else's approval. What happened was a rainy night in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, when a man with calm green eyes told me that loyalty mattered more than image. I did not say any of that. Instead, I took a slow sip of sparkling water and let the silence stretch. Silence can be powerful when you do not rush to fill it. Jason shifted, clearly expecting me to defend myself. I did not, because this was not about him. This was about the tiny, steady heartbeat I had heard that morning. 7 weeks. The number played in my mind like a rhythm. 7 weeks meant cells multiplying, bones forming, a future quietly assembling itself inside me. I rested my hand lightly at my waist again, not hiding, not apologizing, just grounding myself. "I am doing just fine," I said finally. Across the rooftop, the music shifted to something softer. A breeze rolled in from the river, lifting the edge of my dress. I inhaled deeply, willing the heat in my cheeks to cool. Jason's new girlfriend, a tall blonde with sharp red lipstick, stepped closer and looped her arm through his. "Babe, the partners are over by the bar," she said, eyeing me with open curiosity. He hesitated for half a second, as if deciding whether I was worth another comment. Then he shrugged. "Enjoy the appetizers, Emily." As they walked away, I let out the breath I had been holding. My phone buzzed inside my clutch. The vibration startled me. I slipped it out carefully, turning slightly so no one could read the screen over my shoulder. Unknown number. No caller identification. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. I had learned to be cautious with numbers I did not recognize. But something in my chest tightened, sharp and intuitive. I answered. "Hello." There was a pause on the other end. Not static, not confusion, just silence that felt deliberate. Then a familiar voice, low and controlled. "Emily." My name in his mouth sounded different than anyone else's. Not loud, not demanding, just certain. Adrian Romano did not ask questions he did not already know the answers to. I felt the city tilt slightly beneath my heels. "How are you tonight?" he asked. The rooftop lights blurred for a second, or maybe my vision did. I glanced toward the skyline, steadying myself against the glass railing. He could not possibly know. Not yet. I had told no one. "I am fine," I said carefully. Another pause. I could almost picture him wherever. He was, standing still, taking in more than my words. "Are you?" he replied softly. And for the first time that evening, my hand pressed firmly over my stomach, as if he could somehow see through the distance, through steel and concrete and silence. Straight to the truth, I had not found the courage to speak. The noise of the rooftop faded into a dull hum as I focused on his voice. Adrian did not waste words, and he did not make casual calls. If he was reaching out, it meant something had shifted in his world, and when something shifted in his world, it rarely stayed contained. "Why are you calling?" I asked quietly, turning my back to the crowd so the wind would swallow the tremor I felt rising in my chest. Below us, traffic crawled along the West Side Highway, headlights stretching like white veins through the dark. "Because I do not enjoy being the last to know," he said. There was no anger in his tone, just precision. "Last to know what?" I forced the question out evenly, even as my fingers tightened around the phone. Another pause. I could almost hear him breathing. Slow. Measured. "You saw a doctor this morning," he said. Not a guess. A statement. My throat went dry. I had paid in cash. I had chosen a clinic far from my apartment. I had told no one. The idea that he knew sent a chill across my skin, not because I felt threatened, but because it reminded me of who he was. Adrian Romano did not build an empire by missing details. "You have someone following me?" I asked. I did not accuse. I did not raise my voice. I simply needed the truth. "I have someone ensuring you are safe," he replied. The difference between those two sentences hung in the air like a fragile bridge. Safe. The word landed heavily. I glanced down at my stomach, still flat enough to hide beneath navy fabric and rooftop lighting. "You do not need to ensure anything," I said softly. "I can take care of myself." "I know you can," he answered immediately. "That is not the point." A gust of wind swept across the rooftop, carrying the faint scent of river water and cologne and something metallic from the city below. I closed my eyes for a second. I had rehearsed this conversation 100 times in my head since seeing that heartbeat flicker on the screen. I imagined telling him calmly. I imagined him absorbing the information without expression. I imagined control. But nothing about this felt controlled anymore. "Emily," he said again, quieter now. "Tell me what the doctor said." The music behind me swelled, laughter rising again as someone made a toast. The world kept spinning. My life divided itself into before and after with a single inhale. 7 weeks, I whispered. I had not planned to say it that way. Not without context. Not without explanation. But the truth slipped out like it had been waiting at the edge of my tongue. Silence followed. Not confusion. Not disbelief. Just silence that felt enormous. 7. He repeated slowly, as if calculating dates, moments, memories. I remembered the rain against his windows, the way the city lights had reflected in his eyes, the way he had said, almost absent-mindedly, that family was the only legacy that mattered. "You were not going to tell me," he said finally. It was not a question. I answered quickly, though even as I spoke I was not sure if it was true. I just needed time. Time for what? He asked. Not harsh, not demanding, just searching. I looked across the rooftop and saw Jason laughing with his new girlfriend, his hand resting casually at her waist. I thought about the comment he had made minutes ago. I thought about how small he had tried to make me feel. Then I thought about the tiny heartbeat echoing in my memory. Time to decide if I was strong enough to do this alone, I said honestly. The line went quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. Charged. Intent. "You are not alone," Adrian said. And for the first time since the call began, I heard something unguarded beneath the control. "Where are you?" I hesitated for only a second, watching the reflection of the city lights tremble in the glass railing in front of me. "I am at a corporate event," I said carefully. "Rooftop. Midtown." I did not give him the name of the building. I did not need to. Adrian did not operate on partial information. If he wanted the address, he already had it. "Stay there," he replied, his voice calm but edged with something firm enough to feel like a hand at the center of my back. "Adrian, you do not need to come here," I said quickly, lowering my tone as a couple of co-workers drifted past me toward the bar. "This is not your world." A quiet exhale came through the line. "Emily," he said, and there was no impatience in it, only certainty. "Anything that concerns my child is my world." The word "my" settled into me like gravity. Not possession, not control, responsibility. I closed my eyes briefly, pressing my palm against my stomach again as if the baby could somehow hear the conversation through skin and fabric and fear. "You barely know me," I said softly. It was not accusation. It was vulnerability. "I know enough," he answered. "I know you do not lie easily. I know you do not ask for help. I know you disappear when you think you are protecting someone." His memory was precise. He was talking about that morning 3 months ago, when I left his penthouse before sunrise, slipping out into a quiet Central Park West Street while he was still asleep. I had convinced myself I was doing the right thing then too. Protecting him from complication. Protecting myself from expectation. "This is different," I whispered. "Yes," he agreed. "It is." Behind me, the music shifted again, louder this time. Someone clinked a glass for attention, announcing a speech from the chief executive officer. Applause rippled across the rooftop. I turned slightly, watching Jason step closer to the center of the crowd, his posture relaxed, confident. The same man who had laughed at my body minutes ago. The same man who had no idea that my life had just shifted into something far bigger than his approval. "How far along did you say?" Adrian asked again, more quietly now, as if anchoring himself to the number. 7 weeks, I repeated. Saying it out loud felt different the second time. More real, less fragile. "Have you been feeling well?" The question caught me off guard. I swallowed. "Tired. A little nauseous in the mornings. Nothing serious." I did not add that I had cried in the grocery store 2 days ago because they were out of the brand of crackers I wanted, or that every scent felt sharper lately, like the world had turned its volume up. "You should not be standing for too long," he said automatically. I almost smiled. Of course he would focus on logistics. Stability. Protection. "It is a rooftop cocktail party," I said gently. "There are chairs." Silence settled again, but this time it felt steadier. Not tense, just aware. "Emily," he said finally, and there was something different in his voice now. Something stripped of strategy. "You will not do this alone. Not because you cannot, but because you should not have to." The words slid into the hollow space I had been carrying since the clinic that morning. I had told myself I was prepared to raise this child quietly, independently, with careful planning and spreadsheets and secondhand cribs if necessary. I had not allowed myself to imagine someone standing beside me. "What are you going to do?" I asked, watching as Jason laughed at something someone said near the bar, unaware that the axis of his evening was about to tilt. "I am coming to you," Adrian said simply. And for the first time that night, I felt the shift before it happened, like the air pressure changing before a storm. I ended the call before I could change my mind. The screen went dark in my hand, reflecting my own face back at me, pale beneath the string lights. "He is coming to you." The sentence replayed in my head, steady and inevitable. Adrian did not make dramatic entrances. He made deliberate ones. I slipped my phone back into my clutch and turned toward the center of the rooftop, just as the chief executive officer finished his speech. Applause broke out again, polite and loud, glasses raised toward the skyline. Jason was near the front now, one arm draped loosely over his girlfriend's shoulder, smiling as if the entire city belonged to him. For a moment, I studied him the way Adrian studied situations, calmly and without emotion. Jason had always valued appearances. Gym memberships, tailored suits, curated social media posts. He liked women who looked effortless beside him. Controlled. Predictable. I used to try to be that version of myself. Tonight, I felt something different settle into my spine. Not anger. Not embarrassment. Perspective. I moved toward an empty chair near the edge of the terrace and sat down carefully. My feet had begun to ache in my heels, and Adrian's earlier comment about standing too long echoed in my mind. I slipped off my shoes beneath the table, pressing my bare toes against the cool concrete floor. The sensation grounded me. 7 weeks. A life forming quietly, regardless of rooftop laughter or careless words. My phone vibrated once more. This time there was no unknown number. A simple text message appeared. I am 5 minutes away. I did not ask how he had calculated that. Midtown traffic at this hour could stretch a 10-minute drive into 30, but Adrian did not deal in uncertainty. If he said 5 minutes, he meant 5. Across the terrace, Jason's gaze found me again. He nudged his girlfriend and said something I could not hear. She looked over, her eyes sliding down to my waist again before she leaned in to whisper something back to him. He laughed. The sound carried this time. I inhaled slowly through my nose, then exhaled. I could walk over and confront him. I could tell him exactly what I thought of his comment. I could expose the truth right here, in front of colleagues and executives and city lights. But that would make this about him. And this was no longer about him. A low ripple moved through the crowd near the elevator entrance. It started subtly, like a shift in temperature. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Heads turned. The string lights flickered slightly in the breeze, casting moving shadows across tailored shoulders and polished glasses. I did not need to look to know he had arrived. The energy changed before I ever saw him. It was not loud. It was not chaotic. It was controlled gravity pulling attention in one direction. I stood slowly, sliding my heels back on, but not fastening the straps yet. The elevator doors at the far end of the terrace opened with a soft chime. Several men stepped out first, dressed in dark suits that fit too perfectly to be off the rack. They did not scan the room aggressively. They simply observed, composed and alert. Then Adrian stepped forward. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone. His hair was neatly combed back, his expression unreadable from this distance. Yet even from 30 feet away, I felt his eyes find me immediately. Not searching, not guessing, finding. Conversations around him thinned into whispers. Someone near the bar muttered his name under their breath, recognition mixed with caution. Adrian did not look at anyone else. He did not acknowledge the executives, or the skyline, or the music. He walked toward me with the same measured pace he had used the first time we met, as if the rest of the world were background noise. And as he closed the distance between us, Jason's smile slowly began to fade. The distance between us closed in steady, unhurried steps, and with each one the noise of the rooftop seemed to dim, like someone had lowered the volume on the entire city. Adrian stopped in front of me, close enough that I could see the faint shadow along his jaw and the way the terrace lights reflected in his eyes. He did not touch me immediately. He did not need to. His presence alone felt like a line drawn in concrete. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice low enough that only I could hear. Not possessive, not dramatic, direct. I nodded once. "I am fine." He studied my face for a moment longer than necessary, as if verifying the answer against something deeper than words. Then, without looking away from me, he asked quietly, "Who made the comment?" My pulse skipped. Of course he had noticed. He always noticed. "It does not matter," I said softly. "It does." The words were not sharp, but they carried weight. Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "Emily, you have friends in high places now." Jason's tone was light, almost joking, but there was something brittle underneath it. Adrian turned his head slowly toward him, not with anger, not with haste, just with controlled acknowledgement. Jason straightened slightly, instinctively adjusting his jacket as if realizing he was being measured. "Jason Miller," he said, extending a hand that Adrian did not immediately take. "We work together." Adrian's gaze dropped briefly to the offered hand, then returned to Jason's face. After a beat, he shook it once, firm and brief. "Adrian Romano." He did not elaborate. He did not need to. Recognition flickered across Jason's features, subtle but undeniable. The name had weight in this city. "I have heard of you," Jason said carefully. "I imagine you have," Adrian replied evenly. There was no arrogance in his voice, just fact. A small crowd had begun to gather, drawn by curiosity more than invitation. Corporate executives, assistants, partners who sensed something significant unfolding. I felt exposed under their attention, yet strangely steadier with Adrian standing beside me. He shifted half a step closer, his arm brushing lightly against mine. The contact was brief, intentional, grounding. "Emily mentioned someone commented on her appearance this evening," Adrian said, his tone conversational, almost polite. "I prefer clarity in these situations." My breath caught. Jason laughed once, too quickly. "It was just a joke. We were teasing." Adrian's eyes did not leave his face. "Explain the joke to me." The silence that followed was thick, but not loud. No one shouted. No one raised their voice. It was simply expectation hanging in the air. Jason glanced around, suddenly aware of how many people were listening. "It was nothing," he said again, softer this time. Adrian finally turned his head slightly toward me. "Was it nothing?" he asked. The question was mine to answer. I felt every pair of eyes on us, waiting. The easy path would have been to dismiss it, to minimize, to smooth the moment over so everyone could return to their drinks and polite conversations. That had always been my instinct. Keep the peace. Absorb the sting. But my hand moved to my stomach again, protective and deliberate. He said I looked fat. I said clearly. The word did not shake this time. It landed flat and undeniable between us. A ripple moved through the small crowd. Jason's girlfriend stiffened. Jason opened his mouth to protest, but Adrian lifted one hand slightly, not threatening, just requesting silence. He did not look at Jason first. He looked at me. His gaze softened in a way only I could see. Then he spoke, calm and precise. "Emily is 7 weeks pregnant." The words settled over the rooftop like a shift in gravity. "With my child." The silence that followed was not explosive. It was heavy. It pressed down on the rooftop like humidity before a storm, thick and impossible to ignore. I could feel the shift in every face around us. Curiosity turned into calculation. Whispered recognition of Adrian's name sharpened into something more cautious. Jason's expression flickered through disbelief, then confusion, then something close to panic. "Pregnant?" he repeated, the word landing awkwardly in his mouth. His gaze dropped to my stomach again, but this time there was no smirk attached to it. "You are joking." Adrian did not look at him when he answered. He looked at me. "Do I look like I am joking?" His tone was calm, almost mild. The kind of calm that did not need volume to command a room. I felt heat rise to my cheeks again, but it was different now. Not embarrassment. Exposure. The truth was no longer tucked safely inside a folded ultrasound photo in my purse. It was standing under string lights in front of colleagues and executives, and the man who had tried to reduce me to a punchline. Jason swallowed, clearly recalculating the situation. "I did not know," he said quickly. "If I had known, I would not have said anything." Adrian's gaze finally shifted to him fully, steady and unreadable. "That is the point," he said. "You spoke without knowing." There was no thread in his voice, no raised volume, just a statement that felt sharper than anger. Around us, conversations had completely stalled. The chief executive officer stood a few feet away, pretending to check his phone while listening to every word. Jason's girlfriend took a half step back, her hand slipping from his arm. I stood very still, my palm resting against my stomach, feeling strangely anchored despite the attention. 7 weeks. A heartbeat that had been steady and strong that morning. Adrian's hand moved then, slowly, deliberately, coming to rest over mine. The contact was gentle, warm through the thin fabric of my dress. It was not possessive. It was protective. "Emily," he said softly, his voice lowering just for me. "You should not have had to stand here alone." The words slid into the hollow place I had been carrying all evening. I did not realize how tight my chest had been until it loosened. Jason cleared his throat. Look, it was just a comment. People joke about weight all the time. It was not personal. Adrian turned his head slightly, considering him. It was personal, he said evenly, because it was directed at the mother of my child. The distinction settled into the air like a final period at the end of a sentence. Not girlfriend. Not acquaintance. Mother. I saw it then, the subtle tremor in Jason's composure. The awareness that this was no longer a casual exchange between coworkers. The awareness that he had misjudged the room entirely. I apologize, he said finally, the words tight. Emily, I am sorry. The apology felt thin, but it existed. And that, somehow, mattered more than I expected. Adrian did not nod. He did not smile. He simply held Jason's gaze for a long moment, long enough that the lesson etched itself into memory without a single raised voice. Then he shifted his focus back to me, his expression softening in a way that did not belong to anyone else on that rooftop. Have you eaten tonight? He asked quietly, as if we were alone in the room. The question startled me with its normalcy. Not much, I admitted. He gave a small nod. Then we are leaving. Not a command. A decision made with me, not for me. And as he guided me gently toward the elevator, the crowd parted without being asked, the balance of the evening tilting so completely that Jason was left standing in the space where his laughter had once been. The car eventually turned onto a quieter street lined with tall trees and understated brownstones, their windows glowing warmly against the night. It felt like a different city here, softer, removed from rooftop spotlights and whispered reputations. The sedan slowed in front of a narrow building with a discreet brass number beside the door. No flashing signs. No grand entrance. Just stillness. Adrian stepped out first, then offered his hand to help me onto the sidewalk. His grip was steady, careful, as if I were already made of something breakable. Inside, the townhouse was calm and dimly lit, hardwood floors polished to a soft sheen, a faint scent of cedar and clean linen in the air. It did not feel like an empire. It felt like refuge. I use this place when I need quiet, he said, removing his jacket and draping it neatly over the back of a chair. I slipped off my heels by the door, the relief immediate. My body felt heavier now that the adrenaline had drained away, every emotion from the evening settling into my muscles. Adrian disappeared briefly into the kitchen and returned with a glass of water and a small plate of toast and sliced fruit. Simple. Thoughtful. You need to eat, he said, setting it down in front of me. I sat at the small dining table and took a bite, surprised by how hungry I suddenly was. He watched me for a moment, not in control, not in surveillance, just attentive. Are you angry? I asked quietly after swallowing. He considered the question. I am focused, he said finally. On you. On what comes next. I traced the rim of the glass with my finger. What comes next is not a business negotiation, I said. It is prenatal appointments and mood swings and a crib that will not fit in my apartment. A faint smile touched his mouth. Then we will find an apartment where it fits. I met his eyes. You cannot solve everything with resources. His expression softened, something unguarded surfacing again. I know, he said. That is why I am asking you to let me stand beside you, not in front of you. The distinction mattered. I leaned back in the chair, studying him in the quiet light. This was not the controlled figure from the rooftop. This was a man recalibrating his world around a future he had not expected but was already claiming. I do not want to disappear into your life, I said slowly. I have my own. He stepped closer, resting his hands lightly on the back of the chair across from me. Then do not disappear, he replied. We build something new. Together. The word together felt unfamiliar on his lips, but not forced. Outside, a car passed slowly, its headlights sliding across the ceiling before fading away. The city continued, indifferent and constant. I placed my hand over my stomach again, not out of fear now, but awareness. 7 weeks. A heartbeat that had already altered the trajectory of 2 lives. Adrian moved to kneel beside my chair, not dramatically, just so his eyes were level with mine. He placed his hand gently over mine. Warm. Steady. You were never alone, he said quietly. You were just early. The words settled into me like something permanent. Not a rescue. Not a takeover. A promise. And for the first time since that flicker of light appeared on the ultrasound screen, I believed the future did not have to be something I faced by myself.